All right, today I have Brandon Marcello of 247Sports here to talk about Auburn football and specifically spring practice and kind of what we can expect for the upcoming season. Welcome to the show, Brandon. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Doing pretty good, man. So I know you worked the Auburn beat for a long time with 247Sports, Auburn Undercover, SEC Country. So you've been around for quite a while, and you've worked quite a few spring practices. So what can you kind of tell us as diehard fans? What can we expect to learn from spring practice, and what can we expect to see?
I know people hate to hear this, but probably nothing. Spring practices
no,
spring practices are pretty overrated when it comes to like trying to find
Sure.
answers. I just remember like anywhere you go in this country, the spring practices, and I mean at Auburn. I mean, for example, spring practices, we'd always hear like Zach Farrar. He was like a breakout star at receiver. Guy never saw the field barely. It's guys like that you'll hear about in the spring, like, oh, so-and-so's looking good. And then they'll get hyped up, get to preseason camp. You'll hear their name again a couple times, then they'll fall off the map. But I guess I'm interested just from an Auburn perspective. I'm not keeping up with Auburn very closely, but I guess I do understand. Is there a quarterback battle now between Bo Nix and whoever?
That's something I wanted to bring up with you. So we've got quite a quarterback battle going on. So Bo Nix is the starter. He has been for 2 seasons. I'm sure you've seen that the fan base is kind of fair weather with him. He had that amazing opening game against Oregon his first year. That comeback at the very end. But since then, he's had a lot of problems just with fundamentals, especially he flushes out of the pocket really quick. He overthrows the ball. It's a lot of stuff like that that's just frustrated fans in general. And so now we have out of Texas, who's supposed to be, hot shot, new kid, scrambles, throws the ball, that dual threat quarterback that we, typically love to see at Auburn. So what we're seeing is we've got Bo Nix. I still think it's, his job to win or lose, I should say. But there's a lot of hype behind Davis. Have you heard much about him? And I know there's a couple other guys, Grant Loy, who came from Ball State. But there is supposed to be a battle on the Plains. So
I haven't heard too much about anyone, to be quite honest. I heard people talking about Grant Loy, but that guy ain't starting.
No, he's not getting the job.
I think in the end, Bo Nix is probably going to end up being the starting quarterback. It's just that they got to put him through the ringer once again. And I saw his quote today. That was a weird quote, and about his detractors. And but anyway, I don't know. Bo Nix needs to stay in the pocket, be patient, and then deliver an accurate ball like any quarterback. And he's been unable to do that his first 2 years. And he doesn't do it this year, then you got to move on. If he doesn't do it in the first few weeks of the season, you got to move on. You can't be sitting there with a junior quarterback who can't hit guys or be patient in the pocket in the SEC. You got to move on. You got to go with someone else to build around.
Do you think that's just a general problem that we had with Gus overall, just the development of players and especially quarterbacks? Because I know when Gus had success, it was with quarterbacks like Cam Newton and Nick Marshall, who came from other teams, JUCO. They already had that development in place, but we tended to see that quarterbacks that started with Gus struggled. So you think that's part of the problem?
Yeah, that, and they just didn't do a great job of recruiting quarterbacks and also high school guys, and then keeping them on campus. I mean, Sean White wasn't ever really going to be an
perfect example,
excellent quarterback, but then his personal demons caught up with him anyway. And then you look at Malik Willis. That's a guy that very well should have been the starter, I think, and I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. And yet didn't happen. He transferred to Liberty and he's tearing it up there. Joey Gatewood's another guy where I heard this time, I guess, almost 2 years ago in preseason camp when it was between him and Bo Nix.
And Bo,
I was hearing, maybe it was spring. I guess they were both here in the spring. I was being told by people at practice and on the staff Joey Gatewood's the better guy right now. And then that started disappearing after 2 weeks. It was quickly replaced by, it looks like Bo's the guy is going to end up being our starter because Joey's kind of not hitting what he needs to hit and being as accurate as he and grasping the playbook as much as he should have.
Because I know the talk about that around Joey Gatewood and Bo Nix, there was the talk of favoritism being a possibility. So from what you actually saw in practice, was it actually just the accuracy and the Joey Gatewood not coming through?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't get to watch any practices really that were anything substantial, but I just leaned on my sources and people who were at practices. And like I said, including people who were on the staff and were involved in the decision-making. And that's what I was being told. But I was also being told that Joey, the first 2 weeks of spring practice going, this guy is killing it right now. And then something got lit underneath Bo's butt and he got going, and it was really all from there. Bo was leading the way, and it might just be as simple as just grasping the offense. And when it comes to Gus, his offense is strange just because it leans so much on receivers that kind of break off routes, so to speak. And they almost have to have a psychic connection with the quarterback to know when that's happening. And it wasn't really conducive to success most of the time. And also, as much as we talk about the quarterback development, I was never impressed with the receivers at Auburn, other than
we had a couple.
Yeah, Duke Williams and Sammy Coates. I liked Ryan Davis and Marcus Davis, but I mean, no one ever really stood out. And you thought a few years back that haul they got with Nate Craig Myers coming in and all that was finally going to flip, and that never happened. And we talk about development, and that's a big thing. And if you parse through things that the current Auburn staff has said, they've kind of hinted toward that as far as developing players, that wasn't really the case, especially offensively. But at quarterback, that was the Achilles heel. It's just they didn't develop a high school quarterback. They got JUCO guys in. I mean, Jarrett Stidham, I think, got criticized way too much, but he was a guy that transferred from Baylor, was in the system barely, and killed it his first year, and then kind of dropped off the next year after being in the system for a year. So there's definitely some merit to that, and and I'm interested to see what Gus does at UCF, because he's inheriting a pretty talented roster there. But, with Brian Harsin, I'd love to chat with him and kind of bend his ear on like what exactly he's wanting to do with this offense with Mike Bobo, because I don't quite know. I mean, I've watched Boise State's offense and game tape, and it's almost like everything you see now. I think the one thing that will be something to keep your eye on with Auburn this year is the tight ends. I know everybody loves tight ends. They love throwing the tight end.
There's three big tight ends right now.
That's kind of what Harsin likes to do.
Yeah.
He likes to get those tight ends quite involved, split them out, put them in the slot. And I was talking to my colleagues at 247 about this, and this is just college-wide, football-wide. We're seeing more and more now. We're seeing the big receivers line up in the slot. And obviously that was never really the case. We're seeing that more and more, and guys are just mixing and matching. And, if you're a Brian Harsin, you might start seeing a little bit more of that if you're an Auburn fan.
Sure. That makes sense. So, so the receivers are a big question mark for Auburn. Running back, we've got our go-to guy, Tank Bigsby. He's going to start. There's already hype behind him about possibly being a Heisman candidate. I think it's a little early to say that.
Yeah, I don't. See that.
I think it's a little early to say that. But if we can get the offensive line developed, that might be a possibility. But until that happens, I don't see it happening this year. Maybe a year after that.
I mean, they haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher in 3 years?
Exactly. It's been a
doing
struggle
piecemeal along that offensive line. I don't see that. I mean, I like Tank. I like the way he runs.
Sure.
Not with that offensive line. There's not going to be. I mean, you could put it's not happening. Sorry.
Well, no. I agree with you. And I've got when our backup is, I like Sean Shivers, but he's a small guy, and I do have some questions about what he's going to look like and how he's going to perform in Harsin's offense. But past Shivers and Tank, I don't know who we're going with. I know Barrett swapped to running back, but I really don't know anything about him as a running back.
Devin Barrett?
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that. I spent some time with Devin in Tampa, I guess 4 years ago. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
And everybody I talked to down there kept comparing him to Trey Mason with his running style. He was a guy that just kind of fit through, really, really tight holes.
Sure.
That's what she said. And would manage to, get through and make something out of nothing. And then all of a sudden just, get be in the linebackers and face and knock them over. So I was kind of surprised when they moved him. And I always wondered, like, if they had kept him back there, if he may have been able to step in for, I guess at that point, was he there in 2017?
I think is this his third year?
Man, I can't remember.
It was 17 or 18. I can't remember. That sounds right.
But I think he
Someone
could have
knows.
stepped in 17.
In the comments.
I'm pretty sure it was 17. It was his first year, maybe. He could have stepped in and helped carry on Johnson, in that Iron Bowl, which at that point it was over with when he got injured. And obviously the SEC championship game. I mean, if Kerryon Johnson was healthy in that SEC championship game, I think Auburn
would have been different.
Georgia.
Different.
That's the thing, man. You got to have two really good running backs in the SEC to really get things going, or you better have like an otherworldly quarterback like a Kyle Trask or Mac Jones or a Tua.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I like Shivers. I just don't know that he's your number two. He's got the speed and all that, but he's not a true number two back.
Yeah, he's a change of pace guy.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to Harsin, I know that back when Harsin was at Arkansas State, you were able to sit down with him and interview him in his office. And so I'm curious as to what kind of insight you have on him. I know you also said you don't like to make predictions about how a coach is going to do. But with that being said, what kind of guy was Harsin when you talked to him, and what kind of insight can you give us from what you know?
Yeah, I mean, he's a business-minded guy, very, close to the vest. Whereas Gus Malzahn was kind of goofy at times, this guy is just like straight cut. What you see is kind of what you get. And that was at least from the 45 minutes or so I spent with him in Jonesboro. And at that time, he maybe wasn't as protective as he would be now in an SEC program. He was a little bit more loose lipped, so to speak, when chatting with you and would be willing to share things. But even then, it was kind of a tight ship. And I remember talking to him then, and it was his first year at Arkansas State. Arkansas State had gone through first year coach after first year coach after first year coach. And I was like, so are you going to be here more than a year? And he kind of was like, if something comes along, I can't say that I'm going to be here. He's just straight up.
Alma mater offers me a position. Yeah.
So sure enough, his alma mater comes open unexpectedly, and Chris Peterson leaves, and he jumped at it, and no one faulted him for that. But Arkansas State was just like in this tizzy of like, man, it was just the worst luck every time. It's like these perfect jobs open up for these guys, and they have to leave. They don't blame them. Yeah. But I would be interested to chat with him again, but also just kind of study and talk to people around him and hear about how he's changed since he was the head coach of Boise State. He's under a lot of pressure now, more pressure than he's ever faced in his life. And at Boise State, not to say like he was on the outs at Boise State, but things were kind of getting rocky there his last few months. He was raising a stink about the MWC, the Mountain West, and wanting to leave the conference. He didn't agree, I think, with the school president's stance on some stuff about the COVID-19 protocols, and it all became public via an open records request, I think in November,
I was
December.
Not aware of any of this.
Yeah, and the emails came out, and you could see everything that Brian Harsin wrote. And it's obvious that he was kind of. I'm not downplaying him or anything like that, but I think his tires were stuck in the mud a little bit. He felt like he was just spinning and wasn't really getting to do what he wanted to do which was kind of compete for, New Year's Six bowls, but also for a bigger conference title and a bigger piece of the cake. And you want to get in that in the MWC. And then meanwhile, they ended up losing the MWC title. They weren't winning titles as much as they were accustomed to there, but yet they were averaging 10 wins a year, but they took like a half step back in his last like 4 years there. So it was kind of one of those situations where he left and the community there was like, yeah, we need a fresh start. We need to get someone else in here and see what they can do. But credit Harsin, he started the dialogue about leaving the MWC, and the new athletics director there, who came from Baylor, he has said here in the last few weeks, we're open to it now. We're looking at potentially leaving the Mountain West and see if we can go somewhere. And the hot topic for them is the American Conference, which would be a great fit for them. But but it probably won't happen until 2025 or 2026 because of TV contracts and everything. But
did that come up when you spoke to Andy Avalos?
I asked him about it, and he was very like, I'm just worried about what's on.
A little close to the vest on it.
Yeah. Though he did tell me he grew up a huge Notre Dame fan, and is still a Notre Dame fan, even though he's a Boise State guy. Went there, played there, coached there, now the head coach. And he's like, I want to schedule Notre Dame. We got to play Notre Dame somehow. Now, I mean, good luck with that. Notre Dame is like the number one team everybody wants to schedule for a non-conference game. But, no, he hasn't really talked about all that. And he says it'll work itself out. And he's, I just want to be able to win games here.
Okay. What about two of the new coaches that were hired at Auburn? So Derek Mason and Mike Bobo. I know you're familiar with them because of their time at South Carolina and Vanderbilt. And some fans had some concerns about them. There's some excitement, but also some concerns. I think there were more concerns with Derek Mason, but I don't think they're necessarily founded. People were concerned because the losing seasons at Vandy, some other things that were going on. But my argument for that is look at how he did it as a defensive coordinator at Stanford. Right. And I think that's what we should be looking at. So what is your opinion on that?
I mean, that's the type of expectations you should have for Derek Mason. Not to say it's not going to happen, but that's the expectation he should have and everybody else should have, is what he did at Stanford, putting together top 15, maybe even top 10 defenses, and being able to kind of carry the torch from Kevin Steele, who, the defense kind of took a step back last year, which was expected after losing everything they did. But, get it back to a top 25 type defense this year, then build it back up to top 15 in 2022. I mean, if Auburn has a top 25 defense this year and that offense shows any semblance of improvement, they should win 7-8 games. And fans should be happy with that, considering
where we were this year.
Back, and the talent level at this point. But listen, I don't have any issues with who they hired, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I think Mike Bobo gets a bad rap because of the
why does he
Georgia
get such a bad rap?
Because of the Georgia
mostly
fans.
Georgia when he was there with
I mean they got tired of everything with that, and that's kind of where it permeated through fan bases elsewhere in the Twitter sphere. He like almost became like a verbal meme, so to speak, among fan bases. So I mean he's a good coach. I mean I talked to Shane Beamer at South Carolina, new South Carolina coach, and he wanted to keep Mike Bobo there as his OC. So the guy's wanted. He's a very sharp mind, and listen, Brian Harsin, he's an offensive guy. He's called plays, and is almost always called plays every year. And so that's going to be a very something to keep an eye on with that dynamic there and kind of what they come up with for the offense.
See, and speaking to that, I'm excited that we've got Brian Harsin, former quarterback, offensive minded. Now we've got Mike Bobo, former quarterback, offensive minded. So I'm really hoping the quarterback development is going to get a lot better. And because of that, I honestly think they're going to be able to fix some of the, I guess, bad habits is the best thing to say. But some of those bad habits that Bo Nix has developed over time, I'm hoping that that's what will happen.
That's the number one thing, man. They've got to fix his technique and whatever's rattling around in his mind when he gets the ball snapped to him, because there's something broken there.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I almost wonder if it's him learning from his dad in high school, and just I feel like that father-son dynamic could be different than coach-player. You know what I mean? I may be way off base, but
Well, I know this. I mean,
there's
like,
got to be something.
if you watched him in high school, I mean, his offensive, I don't think he got sacked once his senior year.
So he didn't get sacked once, but his completion rate was still in the 50s.
In high school, or are you talking about in
high school? Oh, yeah, high school. Because I think it was like 58, 59% in high school.
Oh, I didn't
hold on.
know that.
I've got it over here. Hold on.
Yeah, I think his senior year, he didn't get sacked once.
Yeah, 58.5% his senior year completion rate. So if he didn't get sacked, that's pitiful, because even going into
his offensive line was great. I remember watching him in the state championship game, and I mean, he had all the time in the world, but I believe I have to go back, but it was either no sacks or like 1 or 2 sacks, but I'm pretty sure it was 0 sacks the entire season. He had a great offensive line.
That's wild. Wow. Now let me ask your opinion on this. How this is kind of sidebar, but speaking to high school stats, typically how well do high school stats for a quarterback transfer to college? With Bo, if you look just at the completion rate, 58.5% in high school his senior year, and then 2019 at Auburn, 57.6, and then last year 59.9. That's one stat. I know there's a lot of other things you look at, but typically if you look at a quarterback in high school, how well does what they do in high school transfer? There's one person I'm thinking about. I know people are probably tired of me mentioning this person, but there's a backup quarterback, Sawyer Pate. I don't know how familiar you are with high school football in Alabama. I'm not sure if you're here anymore or not.
Name sounds familiar.
He won state. So Thompson High School, where Tua's brother played.
Is he the number 1 quarterback in the Alabama right now?
No, he's actually a reserve quarterback at Auburn. So I think he's on the scout team maybe. But but you had Tua's brother play at Thompson High School, did really well there, and then once he left, Sawyer Pate came in, and so they won state with him. His stats are insane: 3,100 passing yards, 75% completion, 41 passing touchdowns. Pretty good stats at the top high school in the state.
Yeah,
but he's playing like 4th, 5th string in college, and so I just wonder how that stuff transfers or doesn't.
How tall is he?
Oh, it's I think he's 6 feet 6'1", maybe.
Okay, I mean, coaches are big into that.
Kind of average.
But Bo Nix is is kind of on the shorter
6'3".
side too. Yeah, well, he ain't 6'3".
Is that what
they have him at? Are you serious?
I thought they had him at 6'3". I can pull it up while we're talking, but
I don't know. Maybe he did press conferences barefoot.
6'2". They have him as 6'2" on here.
Okay, he's probably, I don't know. He's probably like
6'1.5".
Maybe. Yeah, I just Googled it here. I'm looking back at this 2018 season. As of October 31st of that year, he hadn't been sacked. And I remember talking to people at the championship game. I'm pretty sure he didn't get sacked all year. But anyway.
That's a good O-line.
But you talk about the trying to transfer and I guess maybe extrapolate based off of a high school percentage and what it means when they get to college. When it comes to Bo Nix, again, you could see that he's got a lot of arm talent, because he's completing at or better his percentage than in high school, and yet his offensive line is worse, comparatively speaking, based off of numbers. And also, I think he's just not accustomed to players being in his face, and that's what caused him to get happy feet a lot of times. He just thinks that a rush is coming because 3 plays earlier he's got a rush in his face for the first time.
Yeah, and then if you're not used to getting sacked,
right. Yeah. I mean, what you want to see from a quarterback is general progression year to year, and I don't pay as much attention to completion percentage as I do obviously like QB rating, passer rating.
Sure.
So look, Bo Nix is reminding me a lot of Kellen Mond at Texas A&M.
Okay.
He was a guy that just never really blew the doors off you, but he'd make 1 or 2 big plays in a game, and you're just like, man, it's there. But every year
that's the thing with Bo.
And every year his numbers just like barely inched up and got better and got better and got better.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally by his 20th year this past season, he was pretty good. He was probably, the second best quarterback in the SEC when it came to just actually managing his team. And at A&M, they ran a slower pro style type of offense, and he did very well with it because he was just such a veteran, but his numbers improved from the previous season. Bo Nix, I think, is kind of in that same. I think he's in the Kellen Mond mold, role at this point, like in that mold. He's just. It seems like he's getting a little bit better,
bit, not a lot.
But is it going to get to a point where you're like, wow, that guy was a 5 or 4-star type player? I'm not sure. If you don't see it in the first few weeks of this season, you got to start thinking about making a change. And listen, I don't quite know what the quarterback situation looks like at Auburn behind him, but if you're building for the future and your junior quarterback's not doing very well in the first 3 weeks of a season, it's probably time to make a change and go with another guy, because he's had three years to get it done.
Well, I think if he doesn't do well the first couple of games, we've got a pretty easy road. I think the first 3 games are pretty simple cupcake games, and then we hit Penn State at the 3rd or 4th game. So I think that will really be the turning point for Auburn just in general. That's going to be our first true test, and I think that'll be the first true test for Bo. But I think since Brian Harsin does not really have any ties to Bo, if he's not producing and he's not able to make those improvements, I don't think he's going to have any problem benching him. There's no.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll depend on what's behind him.
Yeah, that too. I mean, he might not have great options behind him at that point. It depends, obviously, what happens this spring and then in preseason camp where his confidence is. Because I don't think Brian Harsin would have an answer even if you put truth serum in him.
Yep.
At this moment, I don't think any coach would, but that's going to be something to really watch, and it's just difficult. I didn't expect last year to go away it did for Auburn, especially at quarterback. I was surprised at how much he struggled. I watched
that Arkansas game was rough. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. And especially the ending. I mean, they should have lost that game. It should have been a loss. But
Auburn did lose. We lost 3 interceptions, and
but I watched the South Carolina game live.
I said Arkansas. I'm sorry. I meant South Carolina. That's my fault.
It made no sense to me what happened in that game by Bo. Yeah. And then I watched the LSU game, and LSU's LSU at that point. They were pretty down, but he's doing whatever he wanted.
Yep.
I don't know.
All right, I know you got to go, so I got one last question for you. All right, when Gus retires from UCF, will Brian Harsin be the next coach?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I do think that it's funny how all that stuff works out.
Yeah.
Harsin replaces Gus twice, and but I do think when Gus retires, he'll probably end up retiring in Auburn.
Yep.
Well, I say Auburn, but at Lake Martin. He's still got his
does he still have his place there? Because I know I think Bruce has his place there as well.
Yeah, he still has his lake house, he told me. I don't know if he sold his place in Auburn. I'm sure he's going to, but
yeah.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires there at some point. But Gus, real quick on Gus, when you talk to him, it's like he was never fired or something. It was just like, just change colors.
That's crazy. So
just put on different.
Not that big of a deal. Just moving on to the next thing.
Moved on. This is the next thing, and I'm going to do everything the way I've always done it, and I'm going to win. That's his whole approach. We'll see if it works.
Sure.
All
right, man. Well, where can people find what you're up to and what you're doing?
I'm on Twitter at Marcello, and of course, you can go to 247sports.com. I've been doing this. I think it's going to end up being a 9-part series on first-year coaches in the FBS this season, all the new hires. Mm-hmm. 2 schools haven't gotten back with me: Auburn,
I was Tennessee. About to say, has Auburn gotten back with you yet?
Auburn and Tennessee. I understand Tennessee because of the NCAA stuff. They're shut out. Yeah, Auburn.
You got the ties to Auburn. They need to call you back. If anybody sees this from Auburn, call Brandon back.
I'll say this: they've gotten back with me, but they're like, we don't know when and if we're gonna be able to do this. I'm like, all right. Everybody else has.
They'll figure it out. What is the name of that series? Meet the New Guy.
Meet the New Guy.
Meet the New Guy.
Video, and I'm also writing articles. Tomorrow's actually Gus Malzahn.
Or really fun.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. All right. Well, hey, thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I will I'll talk to you in just a second before you go. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you again. And I will see you in the next one.